thank you for joining me.
I had an inspiration to make a Stegosaurus from needle felting wool fibers. And here is what happened. As a beginner wool needle felter, I feel an instant connection to this craft. The texture of the wool is so soft and comforting. It feels like a meditation. It feels like creative therapy. And then at the end, we can marvel at the cute object we just created from nothing but bits of fluff. I had an intense desire to share this craft with others so we can all learn and get better together. So I really encourage you to comment and tell me what I can do better. I started with an idea of what I wanted to create. Then I made a wire frame. I covered that wire frame with core wool, and then I started to cover that core white wool with the green that I wanted the final body to be. And here I go, felting. It's so satisfying to simply wrap some fibers and stab it in, and here they connect and form. I'm using more and more so that the white gets eventually mostly covered up. I find that taking the little strands and wrapping it in and then felting and stabbing in seems to help things stick together and connect together. So I add bits and pieces, adding more and more as I go. And here is where we do the bulk of felting, covering up each of the legs one by one, and just letting the needle do its job. Some patience is required, but it feels so satisfying. It's a little like playing with Play-Doh, like when you were a kid, and you just form it with your hands. And over time, a lump of clay becomes something cute. And here, you can do the same with wool and a needle. Just keep adding more and more to cover up all the bits of white. I feel an urge to do as much as possible in a short period of time. So sometimes it means a little bit of the white is still left over, but enough so that it doesn't feel bothersome to me in the final product. And here I go, forming the tail. The original tail was a bit of a tiny nub, and now I want it to be a little bit longer, have more character. And this time I'm using mostly green just because it's such a thin and skinny piece. But even then, it ended up initially a little bit thicker than I wanted, and it took a lot of molding to get it to the final shape that I felt happy with. I think sometimes what works against me is that I really like little tiny cute pieces, and sometimes that's a little bit more tricky because felt needs a little bit of volume for everything to stick together. And if you start out with too much wool, it'll compact only so much. But I really like the cute tiny objects and little animals and creatures. So I keep trying to make my cute tiny things. And here I'm trying to work on the legs, keep going back and forth. I want the legs to look uniform and also to look even with each other. And as a beginning felter, I think that's one of the trickiest things, to make all the limbs and appendages look exactly like the other ones. And it probably won't be exact, but if it's close enough, then that's good. So if the leg is a bit too fat, then you keep felting to make it a little skinnier. And of course, if it's too skinny, you can add some more felt to bulk it up. But I love how round and puffy my creature looks, with its round, nubby legs and the pooch in the belly. It's already looking pretty cute. But I'm gonna keep going because I still have quite a lot of work to do. And with each stab, it gets closer and closer to my original idea of what I wanted to make. Sometimes it feels like a lot of work to cover up the core wool. But I like using core wool because it means that I need less of any specific color for a particular project. And I really dislike having to wait for another shipment if I decide on a project, if I don't already have that on hand. I know a lot of really established wool felters have walls and walls and sacks full of lots of wool in various different colors. But as a beginning felter, you don't really have a dedicated space to store all that wool. And yet you have ideas and you want to get started on these ideas right away, and not having enough of the right color available is really annoying. So even though I do have plenty of this green color right now, I just like the idea of using as little of the color as possible, so that if I need it in the future, I've got it and I don't have to worry so much about it. And honestly, it's kind of fun. That's the whole point of needle felting. At least it is for me right now, to just enjoy the process and feel the needle sinking in and shaping whatever it is I'm shaping at this moment, which is the tail. Again, I keep going back and forth to the tail because it's not quite what I like. I do kind of like moving around and around the body, coming back to a certain area, because taking a break from it, working on a different piece for a little bit, gives you another perspective and some time to see how it looks in relation to the rest of whatever you're working on. So here, as I form the body more and the back more, it gives me a sense of what I want to do for the neck, or for the legs, or for the tail. And then once I form one part, it gives me some perspective about how thick or thin or what shape I want something else to be. For example, this belly, I don't know how fat I want it to be, and how do I separate it from the legs and provide it some level of definition. And how much of a hump do I want for the back? I did run into some problems with the frame in the back being so close to the top that my needle would sometimes hit it, as I covered the back. But I also like the frame in that it gives me more flexibility about shaping the position of the legs and the head as I want. So I think for such a small object, I didn't necessarily need the frame, but for something long like this, I kind of like that process. And I'm generally fairly gentle with my needle, so I didn't really fear it bending or breaking, which I guess if you're a very vigorous felter, perhaps that might be a problem. So getting in between and trying to make sure everything is down. Poke, poke, poke. In some ways, it feels kind of never ending. You keep working on it, and there's still so much left to do. And yet, in the moment, you get so sucked in that you kind of forget about other things, and all you're doing is working on that little piece, and then the next little piece, add a little bit more, and you keep going, and you don't know where the time has gone. That is really the fun of needle felting. You're focused and working and crafting, but you can also slightly zone out a little bit, which is nice. You get into that flow state where it just feels so natural. Like you're not even really thinking about anything else, but just creating this thing. And as I got closer to the final body that I wanted, then I made the spines, and I made them different colors to have it stand out and attach them. And in the end, that was my final product. How do you think it compares to my original vision? Like, subscribe, and comment and tell me, what can I do better?